that that makes a perfect segue to our next segment. Because
Yeah.
when you discuss the narrative, for me that's so interesting because let's go back 2 months ago to the world of sports cards. If you look at what was happening 2 months ago, everyone was saying Luca the next MVP, right? And then people were buying at 100K, maybe even I think at one point 100K solely on the fact that people were expecting Luca was gonna be amazing. Mavs would be a top seed in the West and all that. And looking at it today, they're not in the playoff race. Luca more or less has the same stats, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't really improve defensively, although they're winning a bit more recently, but still same narrative. And yeah, basically same place where he was last year, but the team isn't doing so well, and it reflected in the price because I think let's say I think locally the highest one I saw was 90K back then, and today I think an auction ended yesterday or a day or two ago. It was like 55K.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a steep drop.
Yeah.
And that's like I would say narrative because just in 2 months you see the quick shift in narrative. So I guess with that question, I'd like to ask, with that um, example, I'd like to ask, what are the similarities and differences that you see when it comes to stocks and sports cards?
Yeah, so actually that's a perfect no, that's a perfect description of what's happening now. And for me, yeah, we go back to the general rule of investing, which is it going to perform better in the future than where it is today? So that's where things are very, very similar when it comes to stocks and sports cards. No? Kasi, it was Justin put it perfectly no, na yun nga yung nangyari talaga kay Luka. Before the season started, people were expecting that he was the MVP front runner, di ba? The Mavs would be. I actually projected those things then. No? Kumbaga, I understood well back then na, uy, Luka was essentially a bit, considering all of the modern players out there, he's a bit overpriced in that regard because people were expecting great things from him. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the exact expectation from him. MVP, top four seed in the West, potential conference finalists, stuff like that. So when those things don't materialize, no, because back then kasi, di ba, it's all going to be whether people believe you can be better today than you were yesterday. And that is the same thing with sports cards. Now, in the stock market, it's earnings. It's the can you make more money in the future? In sports cards, it's can you accomplish more this season
Mm,
than you did the past season? And that's actually been my yeah, that's actually been my kumbaga, my criteria for selecting which players to. That's one of the criteria that I use for selecting the players that I invested in because then I would list down what awards did they win so far for their career. So all NBA, all stars, stuff like that. And what are the other potential awards that they could win in the future? So the harder it is to attain the next accomplishment that they need in order for people to to sentimentally love you again, the riskier kumbaga the riskier that player is as an investment. So we tend I tend to use that criteria kaya I always looked at where were they last season compared to where I expect them to be this season. No? So for me, that's one of the biggest similarities between sports cards and the stock market or any investment in general. You always have to be forward looking.
mm,
No? It's
right.
sometimes going to be hard because sometimes you want the validation. Diba? It's hard to buy Luka Doncic cards when you're not sure if they're going to make the playoffs. It's hard to buy Kevin Durant cards when he was injured last year. It's
Mm.
hard to buy Stephen Curry cards when he was injured last year also. So that's why you have to understand that it's investing is always going to be a risk. And what you need to do lang talaga is to make sure that you are taking as little risk as possible while maximizing the upside that you are looking at. So I think we will have the opportunity to expound on this naman later. But that's one of the things that you can, as an investor, no? Not as a hobbyist, but as a sports card investor, I think that's something that you can use also, no? That people can use also as a determinant for whether to invest in this particular player or to look for another player that offers better upside. Kumbaga, parang ganon.
Okay. What about when it comes to differences that you see when it comes to stocks and sports cards?
Well, right now the differences are essentially ano lang. In terms of the dynamics kasi I believe they are the same. So the differences are mostly um the fact that it's much more emotional, and so people tend to gravitate toward a very 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 small circle of players lang. 'Di ba? That's a bit different in the stock market kasi a
Mm.
company making 1 billion pesos, for example, a company making 1 billion pesos who is expected to make 2 billion pesos next year, for example, is going to be considered a good investment. A company that is making 2 million pesos this year and is expected to make 6 million pesos next year is also going to be a good investment. And because of the number of people that are already trading in the stock market, there's liquidity there. Now, it's not
Mm.
going to be hard to get in and out. Sa NBA cards kasi, what I've noticed is that it's a bit harder to do. Kasi the speculating in the NBA is a much riskier prospect. Kasi yung pag-flame out ng players is much more the prospect of them flaming out is much more real. Diba? Wala masyado siyang middle ground. Diba? Kumbaga sa stock market kasi if you're a mid-sized company, there's people who will still be willing to invest in you just because you're showing growth.
Mm.
But in the NBA,
It's true. It's
pagka nawala yung, 'di ba, when people finally conclude or when they finally decide that, oy, this player is not going to be a superstar, they tend to leave it na. 'Di ba?
Yes.
Parang lahat ng tao, lahat ng players or lahat ng investors sa sports cards, ang hinahanap is the next superstar. No, none of us are investing. Uy, I'm
tama.
going to invest in, 'di ba? I'm going to invest in, let's say, Killian Hayes because I think he's going to be the next Lou Williams. 'Di ba? Parang ganon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody is doing that. He's going to be the next sixth man of the year. 'Di ba? Parang
Yeah.
nobody is doing that in the sports card hobby. And so the
Yes.
middle
Yes.
ground, the place where the middle tier superstars or the middle tier
Right.
stars exist, they're essentially non-marketable, 'di ba? So yung gap between where you can invest in the sports card market is much much wider than in the stock market. And yung gap na yon, that increases the risk. Kasi pagka hindi nag-crossover into superstar territory yung bet mo, it's going to be very, very hard to make money in the sports card market, 'di ba? Kaya parang ganon, parang we're always you buy Sekou Doumbouya because you think he's
Yeah.
potentially the next Giannis, 'di
Yeah.
ba?
Yeah.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
'di ba? So laging ganon yung mindset natin. And if it turns out to be na hindi siya ganon, talagang abandon ship agad lahat.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what was once 1,000 pesos per card can easily
Being-
turn into 50 pesos per
Yeah,
card. So,
I was exactly gonna
di
say
ba?
that. 50
Yeah.
pesos.
Yeah. So in the stock market, when you invest in a mid-sized company, it
It
can
will
still
hold
make
value.
money. It
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the
Tama.
next Ayala Corporation for it to be a
Yeah.
successful
So,
investment.
yeah. As
So
long
that's something lang that I've
yeah.
noticed is one of the biggest differences between the two. Kaya nga I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of legends, a lot of vintage cars being more popular. I know, more popular recently, di ba?
Mm-mm.
Because if you're a serious investor, that's one of the things that you would notice immediately. Even if you're new to the hobby, that's what you're going to notice. Grabe yung gap between even MVPs, di ba? MVPs without championships versus MVPs with championships. The gap is huge, di ba? So sobrang ano siya, sobrang risky if you put it that way. How much more yung gap between superstar or MVPs with championships versus the ones that didn't pan out at all, or the ones that are just good players, role players, stuff like that.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah. That makes a
Totally
lot
agree.
of sense.
Totally
Yeah.
agree.
It actually, you brought up a good point, and it leads me to my next question, because I think each to each his own in the hobby. When it comes to not even just the hobby, when it comes to investments, you have
Yeah.
people who have focus on fundamental analysis, technical analysis. You have long-term investors, you have traders,
Hmm.
and then in the hobby, you have pure collectors and then pure investors. And it's a great dynamic because um, it's a fun environment to be in. Having different perspectives because there's no right or wrong, like way to do things. But I'd like to ask your take on the risks involved when it comes to two specific um, assets. I would say. So, what do you see the risks are involved when investing in these so-called basura stocks and sleepers, which are your, you never know if they could pan out,
Yeah.
or if that a card that can go 10x or go to zero, or
Right.
against your blue chip stocks and against your proven superstars, because a lot of people struggle to find which lane to focus on, because like other one is high risk high reward, other one prioritizes
Yeah.
safety. So what do you think are the
Mm.
risks involved, pros and cons, or your thoughts on
Yeah.
picking?
Nice na. Yeah, yeah. Actually, nice because that's something that I actually do when it comes to sports card investing as well. No? Para kumbaga, I clearly delineate where I'm going to be investing in. So I kumbaga, I determine clearly that this money is allocated for cards that are of the superstar kind, yung mga established stars na, and I have this much to dedicate to sleepers, which may turn out to be good, or they could either become busts. So that's actually something that is going to be necessary for all investors to learn when they do decide to kumbaga to get into investing, kasi we have to be very very clear about our approach. So it's all a game of risk management naman eh. Kasi as long as you employ risk management in your investing, whether it's stocks or in crypto, you're going to be able to enjoy it properly. And if you do make a mistake, you're not going to blow out your kumbaga, your money or your account, so to speak. So the risks involved essentially are going to be when it comes to sleepers or when it comes to basura stocks, what catalysts are there again
Mm,
for them to go up? So for basura stocks, it's the speculation. Eh. People are speculating that something significantly good will be happening to that particular company. So as long as you understand that most of the time, if you're going to trade basura stocks, and that the basura stocks by nature are driven by speculation, that will now cause you to set more conservative target prices. That's now going to cause you to be more comfortable with not really selling all the time at the peak, Diba? That's one of the things that you can do. In fact, that's something that I kumbaga, I do with sports cards is that one thing you can do is you aside from your personal vintage collection, you can clean out your portfolio year after year. Every season. Every end of the season, clean out your portfolio. And then if they do overperform, 'di ba? There's eventually going to be a pullback naman, but then you'd be on safer ground. You'd be more sure that, oy, for example, yeah, sila Darius Garland, Cam Reddish, 'di ba? Parang you can essentially just clean out your whole portfolio at the end of the season and then just go back into them once they've established further that they are worth investing in. Pero
Mm.
for you to hold na, wait, I'm going to buy the cards of Sekou Doumbouya right now or whoever it is that you're looking at, and then I'm going to hold it for 5 years because that's how much I believe in it. And then he's not even that high to begin with. It's going to be very, very risky for you because there are a lot of factors that could come in. But there's the talent level. You have to understand that every year there's a new rookie class coming in. So there's a lot of different factors that could affect the performance of a player. It's not always about the talent. And so once you understand that when it comes to your investments in the sleepers, you're going to understand that, wait, maybe making times three the amount of money on this player is enough for me na. Instead of targeting always the home run plays, the times 10, times 15, times 20. So you're giving that up to the market na, di ba? Parang you just, that's ano eh, that's fine by me. After all, I don't plan on stopping doing this naman anytime soon. So I'll just look for the next best opportunity because opportunities are always going to be there naman. And that's actually something that I'm happy about kasi kumbaga, people hopefully will be able to pick something up from our podcast kasi we need to make sure that people understand that they can actually make money from sports card investing. That's for me that's healthy because sometimes kasi 'di ba understandably people don't want to mix the two, 'di ba? The love of the hobby versus the
Right.
investing aspect of it, 'di ba? Kasi it at times naman talaga it feels wrong, especially if you've been a long time collector and then suddenly a huge amount of people are going to come in looking to make money lang. But for me, for the health of the industry, people need to know that they can make money from this. People need to know that they can speculate on this. It's just that we also need to educate them how to speculate properly so
Right.
that they won't always be holding on for 2 years for a player that's going to be good for 20 games only or stuff like that. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest risk involved when it comes to basura the sleepers is that they tend to fizzle out quickly unless they can prove that for stocks they can make sustained money in the future, or for players they can do it over more than just a month or more than just a season, stuff like that. Versus the blue chips naman, they tend to move slower, but actually no, actually um the blue chips for sports cars right now I think are really really good investments because invest most of the people so far are collectors pa. Diba? Most of them are collectors pa. Kaya you will see a lot of market inefficiencies pa in the sports car. At least from my review, no, from my review lang, there's a lot of inefficiencies pa in the sports card market right now. That's why that's reason why I think grabe yung galaw ng vintage lately. It's because yung mga pumapasok na funds ngayon are a bit more professional in their approach. Medyo mas well-researched siya. And so, kahit retired na yung players, gumagalaw pa din. Why? Because there's a huge market inefficiency for those things, di ba? Parang some of the more accomplished players that are for me, one example is for Dwayne Wade. Diba? Dwayne Wade is very, very accomplished. Diba? He's very, very accomplished. Tapos, he's not exactly the boring kind of player. he's not a bore, di ba? Yung
Definitely.
asawa
Yes,
niya,
sir.
celebrity. Tapos he's
Right.
always nasa All-Star game pa din siya, nasa All-Star
Yeah.
weekend,
Yeah.
judging contest, that's very active siya on social media. So, but his prices back then were really, really cheap, di ba? You could get a 9.5 tops chrome of him, I think, less than 20,000 pesos. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's huge mispricing in my opinion. And once more and more professionals come in, they're going to correct that inefficiency. They're going to correct that gap, that inefficiency. Kaya I see even with the blue chip stocks in the sports card market right now, malaki pa din yung potential. Kasi
Mm-mm.
meron pa ding inefficiency na nangyayari dyan. We can try looking at the prices naman later on. But yun, just a quick glance at the prices of these, parang nakaipon lang lahat ng money kay Jordan eh. Diba?
Mm-mm.
A lot of the money is poured in on Jordan to the point na a lot of superstars, in fact, even LeBron, I believe, is severely, again, I mentioned it before, severely underpriced. So you cannot have those things, and the market will eventually correct itself as more and more, um, kumbaga, well-researched investors come in. Kaya for me, blue chip superstars, no, proven superstars, especially those with legacies na talaga, they are very, very good investments. And they might even perform better pa than the supposedly high upside sleepers out there right now. Until such time na mawawala na yung inefficiency na yon, tsaka babalik doon sa mga modern. Kasi sila naman yung magiging underpriced at that point in time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a quick story on a Dwayne Wade card. Um,
Ganda si Chris.
man, uh, like
The
I
one
have
that got
a
away ba?
I have a kuripot story that I regret.
Kuripot.
Like I remembered
Sige.
December, I think, mga December. I was looking at Dwayne Wade cards. When I go with vintage or retired players in general, I try to go for a Topps PSA 9. Um, so I was looking at Dwayne Wade Topps PSA 9 comps were, I think, 4K if I'm not mistaken. Tapos may nakita ako sa groups because it's a bit hard to come across Dwayne Wade cards. So nakita ko sa group, local group, 5K. So sabi ko, ano ba yan? OP? And then sabi ko, yeah, you know what? I'll find another Dwayne Wade card naman. So hindi ko kailangan yan. And then like I remember checking back mga January, around mid-January. Kita ko mga, I think, around 10K na siya. Sabi ko, what? Like, ba't naging 10K na to bigla? So, sabi ko, you know what? Baka it might cool off, pull back, or whatever. I'll wait a bit. And then, I think I
Sana
saw,
bumalik sa 5K.
I think I saw like 2 weeks ago or something. Like almost 20K na. So I'm like, you know what? Wala na. Like, I missed the boat on that. And
Sa pullback na lang, sa pullback.
tinipid ko pa yung 1K.
Yeah.
Nako. Ay, nako.
Oh, yeah, 'di ba? Parang ganon. Parang dati kasi, 'di ba? Especially since information is not really, yun kasi yung parang
Accessible.
one of the harder things in the hobby is that information is not always readily available. Kaya
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes people make decisions based on their budget, not based on the value of the card, 'di ba? Parang
Mm.
if you see a card worth 10,000, it's cheap or expensive based on how much money you have right now. Diba? If
Mm.
you have 100,000, 10,000 might be cheap. If you have 20,000, 10,000 might be expensive. But that's not, diba? Kumbaga, when studying an asset, that's not how it goes. You need to compare it with others, 'di ba? You need to benchmark it with others. And yun
Right.
yung mahirap minsan sa sports cards right now, although it's gotten a lot easier kasi with the card ladder, stuff like that, may mga chart na sports card investor. Um, yun yung mahirap kasi you're going to be basing it on your budget. Kaya sometimes bibili ka ng mga tag 2,000, 3,000 kasi feeling mo mura siya based on the peso value. But intrinsically, 'di ba, based on the actual intrinsic value of the card, it's actually not worth that much pala. And there's a card out there na parang yon 5,000, 10,000. That's actually cheaper when you factor in how mispriced it is compared to other players. So yun yung that's something that also gave me some struggle at first, 'di ba? Parang nag-struggle din ako with that concept, yung how to understand value in sports cards. Kasi at first talagang eye appeal, tapos yung yung presyo lang mismo ng card,
Mm.
not understanding yung actual value niya relative to the value of the cards of other players or the cards of other sets, 'di ba? Other sets, stuff like that. Kaya nga recently I've been trying to identify yung kumbaga yung sulit na LeBron James cards out there because he has a lot of rookie cards. Tapos it's not always, 'di ba? Hindi naman umiikot yung mundo ni LeBron sa Topps Chrome, sa Topps lang, 'di ba?
Mm-mm.
There's actually a lot of rookie cards out there ni LeBron na I think are severely underpriced pa din. Underpriced na nga si LeBron in general, but meron pang
Super.
subset yon na
Right.
underpriced cards pa din si LeBron. So that's what I've been trying to identify. Kasi katulad nung yung City Heights, 'di ba? Back then, parang PS 80 Heights, bumibili ako parang nasa 15, 18,000, 'di ba? And right now it's at 1,300 na, 'di
Woo.
ba? So parang gano'n, 'di ba? So yun lang kasi back then mahal na talaga naman yung Topps Chrome, yung Topps kasi lahat ng attention andon.
Mm.
But there are a lot of other rookie cards out there, yung Upper Deck MVP, 'di ba? Yung rookie exclusives niya which is starting to gain in popularity. And I've identified a few more nga recently that I've been buying, no? Kasi sabi ko, uy, PSA 10 tapos one-fourth the price of a and it's the same cost as a PSA 9 Bowman Chrome. Pero siya PSA 10 na siya. Shiny din. So parang uy, I think may opportunity ulit doon, 'di ba? Parang that's something that uh yun, I think as more and more investors approach this hobby that way, that's only going to make it healthier for the industry as a whole. Kasi liliit yung chance ng mga investors na completely masusunog. 'Di ba? Yung masyadong magi-stick sa
Mm.
super highly speculative players that may not pan out. Kaya I think with more education actually, okay siya. Kaya nga I think personally, yung vintage still has some way to go. Pero syempre, the initial spike, tas bababa konti. But overall, I think the trend for vintage is going to continue lang for the next year or so because it's still underpriced. There are lots of, especially the champions na mga underpriced. There's a lot of them out there eh. So, I think hahabol pa yon, hahabol. Kasi I don't think MJ is going to come down soon. So everything is relative to MJ lang or everything is relative to Kobe or to LeBron. So that's what you have to do lang. Compare the prices of the cards to the three of them and then determine from there sino yung mura sa tingin mo, sino yung mahal. So parang stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, Speaking of value, prices, and all these stuff, let's play a quick game.
Mhm.
Um,
Hey, game time.
it's just undervalued or overvalued. So we'll go rapid fire. We have 10 um what
Stuff.
10 items. We have 10 items. 10 items on the list. We'll go rapid
Okay.
fire. Just answer undervalued or overvalued. And if you would like to explain, you can explain maybe a couple of seconds. If you want to move on to the next, we'll move on to the next. Yeah, just for a little bit of fun.
Sure, sure.
All right. Number one, undervalued or overvalued? Luka Doncic cards.
Undervalued. He's right now undervalued, still has room to go down because he's still playing. But right
Right.
now, I think given the fact that I believe he has the best chance of becoming the next face of the NBA. So
Yep.
his card
Agree,
prices
agree.
are, I think, yeah, yeah. So I think his
Agree.
card prices right now are 1/30th of LeBron's prices. So
Mm.
from that perspective, I think that's a good value. No? If
Okay.
he goes to 1/20th of LeBron, that's already going to give you a lot of upside. So for me right now, Luka Doncic is undervalued. No? Big
Okay.
picture undervalued.
All right. Bitcoin.
Bitcoin right now overvalued mostly because it had a huge rally from 20 to 50 in a very very short amount of time. So I think it's soon that it's going to have a massive pullback. But over the long term, Bitcoin is going to be huge because limited yung supply niya. So, but in the near term, I think it's overvalued.
Okay. Prism based rookie card PSA 10s.
Undervalued because yun, vintage is the hot thing right now. Nobody's paying attention to Jamorant, Zion, Jason Tatum, stuff like that. And they're the next phases of the league pa din naman. So undervalued siya for me.
Okay. Philippine Stock Exchange Composite Index.
For me, undervalued
Grabe.
just because the economy is slowly reopening naman. Things are moving in the right direction at the very least. So as long as another breakout won't happen, I think the PSEI is undervalued.
Okay. What about silvers and optic hollows?
I think it's just rightly priced. It's
Okay.
not really numbered. It's not that rare, but the eye appeal. I understand that the eye appeal matters a lot, and so I understand why some people would prefer it more to the numbered ones. So I think it's fairly priced right now.
Okay. Dito stock.
Well, overvalued. Again, we go back to what's next, 'di ba?
Yeah.
The technical
Yeah.
launch has been priced in since December, since July or August of last year. So right now it finally happened and it was expected all along. So now Dito has the burden of proving that it can make money na. Kasi it's done with proving that it can do the technical launch. Eh. That's done and over with. So now the next burden is, will you be able to make money? And that's something that's we've yet to discover. No? So I think it's overpriced right now.
Okay. What about high end rookie patch autos?
Well, I think it's fairly priced. One thing why I say that is that of course the scarcity is there, so it's only
Hmm.
right that it commands a higher price. But the only thing is, as more and more investors come into the hobby, more and more investors are going to be basing it on comps. Di ba? That's something that we need to do.
Yep.
And the rarer you get,
Mas
the
mahirap.
the lesser comps there are. Kaya
Yep.
it's in terms of the fair value, it might be high, but in terms of actually being able to sell it, it's going to be harder than usual. Kasi if a person wants comps and that's the only reference that they have, it's going to be very very hard for that to find out, diba? Parang sometimes the last sale is 3 months ago. How are you going to properly
Hmm.
evaluate what its cost should be today when the last price is 3 months ago? Tapos you're going to have to convince pa the person na, you should pay this much because in the 3 months. So I think it's just fairly priced, but yon, it's going to be very very hard to really determine whether it's over or underpriced.
Okay. BGC real estate.
Well, it's essentially going to be, diba, there's a lot of land pa there, there's a lot of opportunities pa there, and it's essentially the next hub of the Philippines, of the
Yeah.
Right.
economic activity in the Philippines. So it's only going to go up from here naman. Real estate kasi, especially with that good the location, you can essentially just expect it to go up naturally over time.
Okay. This is a hot topic recently. Undervalued or overvalued. NBA Top Shot.
Well, for me, it's overvalued, but I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to go up just because people are still coming in eh. 'Di ba? There's a lot of new money coming in. Once all the people that have FOMO are already inside, then that's going to be the time that it's going to pull back. Because right now, I think one of the reasons why prices are going up is mostly because of the money coming in, the new money coming in. It's not essentially that people are more willing to, diba, the existing investors are more willing to pay higher prices. It's just that there's more money coming in. So naturally, it's going to lead to greater demand. So it's going to go up in price. But once all of the people are that want to come in are already in, I think magi-stall na yung pag-akyat niyan, and then it's going to correct into its natural state. So whatever that may be.
Okay. Another and last actually on the list, another hot topic. Everyone talked about this a few weeks ago. I was looking at it last night. For some reason, it went up again.
Mm-mm.
GameStop stock.
Yeah. So I think similar to all the other stocks that are purely driven by sentiment. In this case, I don't think this is even just sentiment. Parang may sort of semi-market manipulation nga na nangyari kasi 'di ba heavily focused yung
Yeah.
pag-buy up nila sa stock, 'di ba? So I think it's over. Kasi fundamentally we don't even know if the price supports its fundamentals, 'di ba? It belongs in an industry that's moving digital na. So you know, 'di ba, yung brick and mortar, especially in the US, baka mawawala na 'yan. So eto, manipulated by the market, so most likely it's overvalued. But that doesn't mean it won't go up further. But it's driven by sentiment.
Okay, that wraps up our undervalued or overvalued game, and that also wraps up our second segment.
Thank you so much for watching. If you dig that video, please don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. And last but not least, don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any video.